Hello, and welcome to another episode of Candid Catholic Convos. It has been a busy week for our family. Spring activities are in full swing. We can finally see the light at the end of the school year tunnel, and we're preparing for my husband to leave yet again for another training mission. It's part of being a military family that there's a lot of travel involved for my husband, but thankfully, most of the places that he's going to are relatively safe. He gets to learn some pretty cool things about his job, and most of the time, he has a chance to explore the areas he's in as well. By now, he's been all over the country, probably most of the 50 states. I lost count a while ago, but he's also spent a large chunk of time overseas in different countries as well. I, on the other hand, am not nearly as well traveled. I've been out of the country once for my honeymoon, and I've traveled to a handful of states, but that's about it. I do have a travel bucket list, though, of places that I want to visit before I kick the bucket. Most of them are places I don't want to just visit. I want to be changed by them. I want to go to Machu Picchu and hike the Incan Trail. I want to go to Italy and traverse on the same streets that my ancestors did. Heck, I'd even love to take a road trip down Route 66 and see all the forgotten cities of our country. It's an old cliched saying, but it's still true. It's about the journey, not about the destination. But as Catholics, our destination is ultimately heaven, right? Our journey should be about finding the best path to holiness and eventually heaven. So how do we do that? How do we explore our faith, physically journey through it, and find ourselves on the path to the ultimate destination? In just a few short months, our diocese will be hosting a young adult jubilee pilgrimage to Rome and Assisi to celebrate the jubilee with Pope Francis and young people from around the world, while also visiting some of the world's most incredible holy sites. I'm super excited to welcome back Zack Haney, Director of Youth and Young Adult Ministries, to talk about how we can truly experience God as pilgrims, not as tourists. Zack, I have to apologize when I start this off because I'm going to make a ridiculous rhyme. Welcome back, Zack. It has been a little while since we've seen you.
I know. It feels like it's been forever since I've been on this podcast.
Right?
This side of the table is a little more empty, though, because I'm here by myself this time.
And I think this episode you will have officially surpassed Sister Geraldine. So,
ooh,
new
all
record
right. I didn't
in
know
the
that.
house.
I didn't know that. So please don't let that hold you back from inviting me more times.
Of course not.
I've got to get ahead of everybody as far as I can.
We have to really cement this record now.
Yes, absolutely. I want to be the GOAT.
The GOAT of the Candid Catholic Convos podcast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll take that title.
So for anybody who may not have listened last week when you were here with Marianne, could you tell me just a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So my name, as you said, is Zack Haney. I am the Director for Youth and Young Adult Ministry for the Diocese of Harrisburg. And so that includes youth ministry, so kids in middle school and high school, campus ministry, those in any of our college campuses throughout the diocese, young adult ministry, which is people in their 20s and 30s, our Catholic scouting programs, as well as our CYO sports. So the difference really I like to highlight for everyone between like my job in ministry to the young people versus catechesis, so like religious ed in the schools, they're teaching kind of the what and the why of our faith, like kind of the facts and the figures of like they're coming to know who God is by like in that way. Whereas we're more about the who and the how. So like how do you live out your life in the church, and how do you live out relationship with Jesus? In that who being like that relationship forming between you and Jesus as well as you and the community. So like where is your place and how do you live that out? So that's kind of where my focus is versus catechesis. Not that you don't learn things through it, and we work very closely together. It's two branches of the same tree. But yeah, just focusing on relationship with God. That's what I do.
That's really cool. And kind of building off of that, because you mentioned the experience and growing that relationship with God. One of the ways that seems to be pretty popular is pilgrimages, and being able to like physically build that relationship with God. So talk to me a little bit about what is a pilgrimage and why have people been taking them since like the dawn of time? What are they truly seeking?
Well, that's a wonderful question. I mean, I love the concept of pilgrimage. I mean, at its most basic form, a pilgrimage is a journey towards something of significance, like a thing or a place of significance more often than not. And what we're referring to here is a place of religious or spiritual significance. But technically speaking, through the definition of the word, you could make a pilgrimage to somewhere else, like Disney World, technically. But that's not the type of pilgrimages that we are talking about here. And you're right, they have been taken since the beginning of time. A lot of early literature is actually about pilgrimages and journeys. So like the Epic of Gilgamesh, which I think is from ancient Mesopotamian culture, one of the earliest stories that we have is about Gilgamesh, this hero who's journeying across the world to seek eternal life. Then we also have like the journey to the West, which is in like Chinese culture, Buddhist, like kind of more of a Buddhist type of spirituality, where, we have this group of people, which includes the Monkey King and like a few others, and they're journeying to the West towards India for enlightenment, like, so they're seeking something deeper, something more. And I think, and then even, you have, the Odyssey, and then you have like Odysseus, he's traveling around trying to find home. And then, we have all these different cultures who, promote pilgrimages. I mean, we have in our own culture, of course, but even back with the ancient Jews, they were called to pilgrimage to Jerusalem, like every year for certain feasts. The Muslims of today, they're called to go on a pilgrimage to Mecca sometime in their life. So pilgrimages, as you said, have this significance in history as well as in all these different cultures. And I think that's because we all recognize that our life is a pilgrimage, that this time here on earth is a pilgrimage, that through this journey through space that we're taking on these pilgrimages, we're mimicking the journey we're taking through time, that there is some other destination that is at the end of our life here. And so that when you go on these pilgrimages, you kind of call that to mind a little bit of like this journey that we're taking through life and kind of contemplating like, well, what is my destination in this journey through life? Through like reflecting on this journey, like the destination of this journey through space. So I would say that's the primary reason why travel and journeying really kind of stand out in the culture and the mythos of humanity throughout time. So
yeah, it harkens back to that saying, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. Although for religious pilgrimages, like our goal is heaven, so the destination is the goal, but the journey is how we find our path there, I guess.
I would say that it's about the journey in the sense of we're here figuring out the journey. Like the destination, technically, it's not about the destination in the fact of like we know what the destination is, or you should know what the destination is, or even a lot of people in their own hearts know what the destination is. Like we are all technically going towards the same destination. We all have the same destiny, which destiny actually for anyone listening, like is just people think it's like everyone has like a particular destiny. No, that's not true. We all have the same destiny because destiny just means I have a destination and all of our destinations should be is heaven. Whether we accept that is up to the individual person, but your destination is ultimately heaven and to be with God. So destiny is technically like we all have the same destiny. Destiny is not something that's like unique, but as you're saying, like the journey is the part is we all trying to figure out how it is we individually are supposed to be getting there. Like what is my journey? There are many things that are the same about everyone's journey. There are many things that are different. You even have to look at the saints to see that everyone doesn't necessarily take the same path to get there, but there's a lot of things about it that are the same. Could give you an example of like the Camino over in Europe, in Western Europe. So this idea of the Camino, which is actually several different routes. Most people sometimes imagine that it's only one road, but actually there's several branches of the Camino that all go towards Santiago de Compostela in Portugal. The Church of St. James that's there. And it's supposedly been the different routes that he took in order to get there. But this idea of there's one destination, Santiago de Compostela, but there's all these different branches that are leading there. And people hop on at different places on the routes. People choose the different routes. How fast they get there is different, where they decide to stay. So there's so many things about this that are different, but everyone's headed towards the same place. And that's sort of what our journey in life is supposed to be like. We all, start at different places, in different conditions. Our routes might be different lengths. How we walk them is different. But the idea is that we do have a lot in common with people, and we are all walking towards that heavenly goal.
I love that. I especially love that comparison to the saints, because you're right. Like, if all you need to do is compare two saints, and no two journeys are the same. I think that that's incredible. I personally have never been on a traditional I've been to Disney World, but I've never been on a traditional pilgrimage. But I understand this is not your first rodeo. Like, you went on the Eucharistic revival last year. You've been on some other ones as well, haven't you, since working with the diocese? So talk to me about some of your past experiences with pilgrimages. Where have you traveled to, and why? And I guess more importantly, what have you discovered on these pilgrimages?
I think it's worth noting, and if I looked at our question sheet, I think this sort of comes up later, but I think everyone thinks that a pilgrimage has to be something like grand, like you have to go far away for long periods of time, which is not true, because as I said in the definition earlier, it's just a journey towards somewhere of significance. Technically, we all pilgrimage to our local parish for Mass. Like, we're called to take that journey to Mass, this coming to this place of religious significance, this coming together and then going home. Like, this pilgrimage experience happens for us every Sunday. So I think people sometimes, when they think, oh, I've never been on a pilgrimage, it's like, no, you've just never been on something someone's called a pilgrimage. or something you don't consider a pilgrimage. But we take pilgrimages literally every day. Go anywhere in the diocese right now. I mean, right now we have those pilgrimage sites for people to go to. We have the 7 or 8 different sites that you can go to, like the Basilica of the Sacred Heart. You can go to the cathedral. You can go to the Shrine of the Miraculous Medal at St. Catherine Labouré. All these places for the Jubilee that you can go to. And it won't take you some cases more than maybe 30 minutes to go stop by and then leave, but that can still be considered a pilgrimage. But to the point of your question, yes, I've been blessed with the experience of going several places, even in my short 2.5 to 3 years here. The diocese as a whole, I think last November, we went all together, we took thousands of people to the National Shrine in Washington, D.C. So that was a pilgrimage. It was only 2.5 hours away, but we still went as a group to this place of importance, especially for faith in our country. I was graced with the opportunity to go to the Eucharistic Congress in Indianapolis. So that was wonderful. I've been to other conferences. Maybe some people wouldn't call them pilgrimages on an advertisement, but it's still a pilgrimage to go to the National Catholic Youth Conference, or to Seek for college students. These conferences where so many people gather, tens of thousands of people gather just for the sake of our Lord. And maybe Indianapolis itself didn't have spiritual significance, but it was more of what we were gathering there for. It's the Lord was there. So, and all of us gathering in the same place to worship the Lord, there might not have been some sort of visitation site from Mary in Indianapolis, but that doesn't mean that we couldn't pilgrimage to that place. And then one of the largest ones I've been graced with the opportunity to go to World Youth Day twice. So the first, I was only 18 years old. I went to Spain, to Madrid, to celebrate with Pope Benedict, with this diocese. I think it was back when Bishop McFadden first took over. Bishop Rhodes was actually kind of with us because it was in that in-between period. So that we kind of had a little bit of a 2-for-1 deal there. But we traveled all the way to Europe, and we were able to go to Lourdes in order to, see the grotto and the everything that's there in Lourdes. As well. And then we went to Madrid for the celebration with the Pope. We were all pilgrimaging to this site in Madrid with the Pope and with our Lord in order to come together millions of young Catholics. It was amazing. And then I got to repeat that experience 2 years ago now in Lisbon, Portugal, to celebrate with Pope Francis. So I as a leader, took a group of young adults to that. And we were able to then stop by Fatima. So we're hitting the big Marian sites. We were able to visit Fatima, as well as then gather in Portugal for all of these wonderful events, once again, with the Holy Father. And then the beautiful thing about World Youth Day is there's actually a pilgrimage within a pilgrimage. So you have the pilgrimage of actually coming to the event. So we're coming from all over the world to come to this place, but then that's mirrored even more specifically within the event on that Saturday to Sunday. So what's the World Youth Day? So on Saturday, we all walk from all over the city in order to come together at the vigil site. So to celebrate with the Pope. So like 2 million people are coming from all over the city. You're either coming from your hotel, or if you're outside the city, they bus you in and you kind of start walking from there. You walk like somewhere between 8 to 10 miles to this pilgrimage site. And it really like reflects that, like, you start kind of on the outsides and like, yeah, there's some people around, but you're mostly by yourself and you kind of really don't know what you're doing. All you need to, like, you really know is like, okay, we need to head north, south, east, or west, like wherever it is. And you start kind of going in that direction. But as you start to kind of get closer, you get to see all the other people start funneling in. And all of a sudden it goes from like this wide, like everybody's kind of individual, to start as we start coming together and we start forming like these crowds that are like, so it's like a line. So, and I almost see that as like that heavenly journey, is that it's like we're approaching closer. We get to see our brothers and sisters, and, you know, that excitement. It's like, yeah, we're almost there. You start seeing everyone. The energy starts going up. You're like, yes, we're almost there. The middle part of that, like the part where we had to walk before, that sucked. But like, but now we're starting to really like come to this site, and like the Pope is close and our Lord is close, and all these people are forever, like are like around. And then like when we got there, it was just being able to rest in that space with so many millions of Catholics. I've never felt more peaceful in my life. So what I learned from these pilgrims, that's kind of like a good example of of some of the lessons that come with pilgrimages. Is like, one is the mirroring of the process. So like, you're always going to start off really excited, even in, like, you know, that's our spiritual life too. We always have like all that emotion, and we're like, yeah, this is awesome, like the novelty of it. But then things are always going to get hard. Like, it's always gonna, like, you're always gonna be walking in that hot sun, not realizing why you're walking. Why did I carry all this stuff with me? Oh, my feet hurt. Like, is there other people around me? I don't even notice because I'm hurting so bad.
Totally chose the wrong shoes.
Exactly. Like, we're all so focused on those little things and the difficulties that, like, in our spiritual life is like, that was dry periods, like those difficult periods, the periods where we're suffering, or it's just like we don't have any consolation or anything like that. And then eventually, as we keep going, our bodies get stronger, it becomes more habitual. And as we're like approaching this heavenly goal, and we start, you know, like kind of seeing like these other people gathering in, we kind of get this, like, we get this renewed excitement, but it's more genuine than the naive energy at the beginning. So that's kind of the life of faith. You know, it starts like high energy, a little naive, and then we get like, oh, now it's really hard and difficult, and it's like we really got to rely on like good habits, good preparations, other people to keep us going. So like, it's good to make sure you walk with someone that keeps you accountable. Like, during those walks, it's like, if you would have been by yourself, you would have probably given up. Or if it's like, I didn't prepare ahead of time and form good walking habits before I showed up, I probably would have given up. Same with our life of prayer and everything like that. And then all of a sudden now, as you kind of get here, like, you start getting that momentum and you start like approaching the goal, like your excitement builds. And so that's like kind of a mirror image of what our life of faith and life on this world is sort of like. And it's even just I'm sorry if I'm talking so long on this. This idea of, I think pilgrimages have given me the perspective, and this is I read this in a book recently that it kind of it articulated what I was learning and in my head. But this idea of like, so life is a journey, but are we as individuals, are we taking it as a pilgrimage, or are we taking it as a vacation? So are you a pilgrim or are you a tourist? So this idea of, in like tourism, like, so if you're going on vacation, you're going for the sake of yourself. Your focus is pleasure. You know, you're trying to escape things. Whereas when you're a pilgrim, you're going towards something, like you're doing this for a purpose, and you're doing it for what you're going towards. You know, you're not here to relax. You're here to accomplish a goal. You know, it's not about you. You're like, you learn to help other pilgrims on the way. So, I mean, there's so many things I could go into about that comparison, but it's this idea is that a pilgrimage is not a vacation. And life is not a vacation either. So I always told all of my pilgrims, it's like, we're not on vacation. We're not tourists. We're pilgrims. We're not on vacation. We are on pilgrimage. So expect things to go wrong and expect things to be difficult, because that's life. So things are going to go wrong. Things are going to be difficult, but that's part of the process. And it's how we handle those things that God can work through us. God can speak to us in those things. If we're always expecting everything to be perfect, like on a vacation, like I was like, oh no, there was this cancellation, or this flight was delayed, and then all of a sudden we're like, everything's ruined. Versus a pilgrim says, it's like, all right, well, what's God trying to do for us? Like, what is God trying to tell us here? Like, what is he trying to tell us in this experience through these challenges and these difficulties? And also it invites us then to trust God in those things. When you feel like you can't do it, that's when God has room to work. So a pilgrimage should be hard.
I love that. I think that's such a powerful sentiment that you're not a tourist. You're a pilgrim. You're on this destination. You're on this journey for a purpose, for a goal. You're not there to just relax. You're just you're right. Like God works through us through our suffering. And it's so funny you talk about it. You can't plan for things to be perfect. You can't expect for things to be perfect. And I always think of when I was getting married, our priest told us that. He's like, trust me, something is going to go wrong on your wedding day, but it's fine. It'll be a funny story later. And I think that like anything going wrong on a pilgrim, like packing the wrong shoes, like, yes, I got a blister, but that blister reminded me of how awesome it was to finally get to that destination and totally forget about the pain, or totally, you're meeting somebody who's walking on the same journey with you, who may be going through something that you can relate to, or like somebody that you can learn something from. And I think that's really important. And you had mentioned earlier about how you don't have to go someplace elaborate. You don't have to go to Rome if you don't want to, but all Catholics are essentially going on a pilgrimage. Should we look at doing something more grand than just going to Mass on Sunday? Like how can we, like, this journey doesn't have to be overseas, you said. So where can we go around here that is something attainable, some kind of attainable pilgrimage for us to do?
Okay. So first, to your point about the things about the good stories, that is what I always tell my pilgrims, is that no one ever tells stories about the time things went exactly according to plan.
Yes.
Those make terrible stories. And even when we look at the movies and the books and everything we read, nobody likes a book that's like, and everything worked out fine. Like, and life was boring and everything went exactly that these people wanted to all the time. It's stories of overcoming challenge. Like a story literally is conflict resolution. And so our lives don't really hold as much meaning unless we face conflict in which we have to trust God, and then together we overcome. So like those are the stories that move people. So like your life is becoming witness as you overcome struggles. Like your life ain't going to move anybody if like you never encounter any difficulty or struggle ever in your life, if you never had to trust God in anything. So that those are gifts more than they're curses, as people might want to think. If you were on vacation, they'd be like, oh, why does the Lord hate me? So then the idea of a pilgrimage. Yes, I mean, as I said, we technically make pilgrimages all the time in our everyday lives, particularly as Catholics. We're called to pilgrimage every Sunday, to go to Mass. But I do encourage people should try to go on some sort of grander, longer pilgrimage. Just because like the more you spread something, like the bigger you make something, it's almost like this is something that's so small, but like if you expand it, it's easier to see what's inside. So like technically, yes, you encounter difficulties on the way to Mass, particularly if you have children. Like, trying to get everyone there. There is no small amount of difficulty. Exactly. It's like, how did you forget your shoes? Like, I can't believe you forgot your shoes. Can we go to Mass without you wearing your shoes? I don't even know. Like, should we go back for the shoes? Like, so there.
That is every Sunday for me. You just quoted every Sunday for me.
And therefore your pilgrimage has meaning. Yeah. But we trusted the Lord in not having the shoes, and it was fine.
And it worked out. Yeah.
And it worked out. But then if you scale it up, more time, more distance, it's it becomes easier to see and easier to experience all of the little things that might be missed in the everyday life. So as those difficulties become stronger, our trust in the Lord becomes stronger. So, I mean, I do recommend it for everyone in your life. At some point or another, if you're one that's just man, I can't get myself to journey outside the country, I would actually recommend it more then, because that means more trust in God. But if it's outside your comfort zone, I actually recommend you do it more. But if it's just not possible for you in order to leave the country or go somewhere like that, I mean, there are plenty of places that you can go to. Number one, the first and most important one, I think, for everyone, every diocese has a cathedral. Every diocese has a central cathedral, and that's the most basic place that you can take a longer pilgrimage, so to speak. We have the Cathedral of St. Patrick's in Harrisburg. I came from the Diocese of Scranton before that, and they had St. Peter's Cathedral in Scranton. So every diocese has a cathedral. So at the very least, you can take a pilgrimage to that cathedral. Whereas, I mean, you might also have basilicas or shrines that you could go to as well. If you're in Pennsylvania, I mean, I know there's quite a few different shrines. Our Lady of Czestochowa, I think, is out towards Philadelphia, so you can go out there. Also in the immediate area, I mean, we talked about, it's not in the state, but we talked about the Shrine of the Immaculate Conception, I believe. It's one of Mary's shrines. I'm pretty sure it's the Conception.
Yeah,
I should know this. Right. I should know this. But down in Washington, D.C., the national, basilica for the entire country. So that's always a great place to go. But there's the Shrine of Padre Pio. It's within the general vicinity. I don't remember if it's in Pennsylvania or in a neighboring state, but the Shrine of Padre Pio. So if there's shrines to different saints, those could always make good pilgrimage spots. There's actually a shrine to soon to be Saint Carlo Acutis that's over at Malvern Retreat Center near Reading. So that could be a place you could go if you're looking for places in Pennsylvania. But then even more nationally, I think a lot of people don't realize that there are places that you can go all across even our own nation that you could visit, such as Our Lady of Victory, I believe, is in Wisconsin. And so I think there was actually a Marian apparition in Wisconsin, and people just don't really think about it. So you can go to places like that, or you could even go, even the ones of historical significance. You could go to St. Augustine in Florida, which is one of the very first missions in the United States. That has spiritual significance. So just finding what's in our own country, what's available in our own country to be able to see. And there's plenty of opportunities. Even then, within our own continent, of course, we have Our Lady of Guadalupe. That's the big one that we have. But also the Oratory of St. Joseph's in Canada. So what's the biggest, I think the biggest shrine to St. Joseph in the entire world. I'm pretty sure. I might be misquoting that. It might just be in our hemisphere, but I'm pretty sure it's the world. But that's out in Canada. So even if you don't want to actually fly on a plane, theoretically, you can visit these places. And grow spiritually in that sense. But then if you reach out to the world, there's obviously endless amount of places. Pretty much almost every country in this world, maybe not every country, but most countries have some place of Catholic significance to them that you could find. Every culture has something. If the Lord's been there, then there's probably some sort of pilgrimage site. But yeah, so I would recommend, even if it's hey, let's do a day trip, figure that out. So drive 2 hours to your local cathedral or to a basilica or something like that. There's plenty of difficulty that you can face in those 2 hours that you experience that spiritual growth and being able to let go. Or even if you want to be if you live in an area where you feel safe enough to do this, try walking a church once, even if it's further away. That can extend your pilgrimage into something, a little more difficult, a little bit larger. So that could be another possibility if you want to try to mix things up a little bit. But yeah, so that's what I got.
I like that. I love the diversity of options that there are, because you're right. There's stuff, we just have to look for it. We just have to be willing to look for the different opportunities that there are to experience Christ in a different journey. It doesn't have to be I think when people think, I know this is what happens to me when I think of a pilgrimage, I immediately think of Rome or having to travel long distances. But you're right. There's stuff that's within a day trip. There's stuff that's within the same continent. There's lots of different options for us to kind of expand our horizons there. And one of those is the pilgrimage that we're going to be taking in July, the Jubilee of Young People pilgrimage to Italy. Talk to me about what we can expect on this pilgrimage. And for those who may be on the fence about whether or not they should come, what would you recommend to somebody who's discerning doing a pilgrimage?
All right. And yes, to your point, this idea of it doesn't have to be grand. We have so many options. One of the beautiful things about our faith is that unlike, faiths like Islam, where, Mecca is this center, and then, Judaism, where Jerusalem was the center, it's and you were called to go and worship there. Our faith is beautiful in the fact that it's universal, and that literally anywhere Jesus is in the Eucharist, we can worship. And so that way, any church can become a pilgrimage site. We can all gather in that place, and it has the same significance as St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. So yeah, I think that's just what's wonderful about the Catholic faith. But yes, but not to discount the fact that we are headed to Rome. We are going to Rome July 26th through August 5th. We are heading for the sake of the Jubilee year. The Jubilee of Young People is happening during that time. So all throughout this year, there's been like celebrations. We had the Jubilee year happening in Rome, but within that, there's like these week-long Jubilee celebrations for different groups of people. Another example was like the Jubilee of Teenagers is going to be, I think, the week after Easter. And so this is the Jubilee of Young People, which is mostly focused on young adults, so like age 18 to 39. Sort of like replacing World Youth Day that was supposed to be happening like this year, but like not completely. It's like some similarities, some differences. But yes, we're heading to Rome and Assisi. We're gathering at this central point of our faith. We're stopping first by, Assisi to see, where, St. Francis and St. Clare lived, where St. Carlo Acutis is interned. This like wonderful holy place where so much revitalization in the faith and in the church happened. So this like little small town was like so incredibly important, like in the growth of the church. We're going to be there for about 2 days before we kind of head back down to Rome for this celebration with all of these millions of young people. We will be participating in those sorts of events, but then we'll also be doing the Roman things. We'll be seeing all the holy sites. We'll be going to the Vatican. We'll be I think we'll be touring like the catacombs, but we'll also be doing, the typical Roman stuff like the Colosseum and things like that. So we get to see this central point of our faith, which is like so incredibly beautiful. There's a chance that we might be able to attend the canonization then of Pier Giorgio Frassati, which is pretty awesome.
That'll be cool if you can do it.
We'll see what happens. As a lot of times with these international events, like things progressively get planned and you don't really know what's going 100% until like a month before, but that's the hope. He is going to be canonized on that last day of the Jubilee, so we'll see what happens there, as like Carlo Acutis then is being canonized at the end of the Jubilee for teenagers. So the wonderful thing that we have these young saints that will be being canonized. But yeah, so it's going to be a really awesome opportunity. We're going to have a lot of time to be able to experience Italian and Roman culture, but also kind of like the roots of our church, of our faith, and this central gathering point. Get to spend time with the Pope again, hopefully, and so it's going to be a really fun time. It's so if you're thinking about signing up, though, remember, as I just said, it's not meant to be a vacation, nor is it meant to be easy, but it's meant to be an amazing experience that will help you grow spiritually. And there is still time to sign up. I think April 27th is our last day where registration closes. So if you're on the fence, I recommend you really start leaning in that direction now. We would love to have you. I've never been on a pilgrimage that hasn't impacted me in some deep spiritual way. It doesn't matter if things were smooth, things were rough, things were everything in between. Like God has something planned for you. If God's calling you on that pilgrimage, God has something waiting for you on that pilgrimage. So yeah, I encourage you to find out.
That's so important that if you're feeling called, there's a reason. It's because God's kind of giving you that little nudge. So Zach, thank you so much for sharing all this information with us. I'm going to put the details on the show notes for how we can sign up as long as we do it before April 27th, so that you can make sure that your spot is secured and you can experience the wonderful things that are waiting for you on a pilgrimage. So Zach, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Rachel. Please invite me back next week.
Yes.
I don't know what we'll talk about, but we got to start working on that streak.
Yes.